Our sister's question, how do we stir or motivate a person who has no interest in salvation? They're too much into the dunya. They're lost in the dunya. How do we stir them? Well, if their love is the dunya, then we try to talk to them about loss of the dunya. Since this is what they love the most, then talk to them about the loss of it all. You know, what if you were to die tomorrow? And all these things that you've been working for, accumulating everything, it's gone. Have you thought about that?
Sorry to interrupt, brother, but actually she was speaking about how she had acquired something, and I put it into her head, what if you lose it? And she said, I'm not thinking about those things right now.
Yeah. If she says, I'm not thinking about those things right now, you say to her, well, really, you should think about it. You know, you try to get her to think about it. No, you know, as you're trying to accumulate, you have to think, what is the end of it all? You know, we are not children who only think of right now. I just want this thing right now, what I can do right now. I don't think about the consequence, what's down the line. No, we as adults, that's what distinguishes us from children, that we do think ahead. What may happen tomorrow and later, when you can lose these things. Why do you have this? Is there no responsibility in it? It's just like that, you have it for nothing?
I work in Dubai.
So, I would just, before that, I would just say, I would try to, for somebody like that, I would try to get to what? The purpose of life. You know? What is the purpose of life?
In fact, when she was at home with me, I put a book of yours that was titled A Purpose of Life in the same room as she was when I was leaving her for some time, and she was reading my 3-year-old son's book when I came back on The Ugly Duckling.
Yeah, because people don't want to think about the purpose of life. You understand? You know, it comes to their mind, but they put it aside, because to get into that, you know, it involves so much else. So it's easier just to carry on in your own way. You're not really thinking. You're filled up your time and your mind, your energies in just accumulating and enjoying. Purpose, purpose now. That's serious. They don't want to be serious. Okay, so somebody like that, the point is that you left the book there. And the book, The Purpose of Creation, even if she looked at it and found the kid's book and started reading the kid's book, still, you don't know. It went into her brain. You see? She may wake up one night and that title will just pop up in her head. The purpose of life. You know? So don't think that your efforts are in vain. If you have put something, they have been exposed, whatever, something has gone in there. It may bear fruit later on. You just keep trying. Okay, you gave the purpose of life there one time. Next time you're traveling with her in the car, for example, you have the tape called The Purpose of Life. Okay, turn that on. You know? Something like this, you know what I'm saying? You just keep trying. I mean, as long as the person is not closing the door totally, you can't get any, input, then you keep trying. And don't assume that your efforts are in vain. This leads to what? Despair. Huh? You give up hope. Just to tell you honestly, I gave Dawa to my parents for 22 years before they accepted Islam. 22 years of Dawa before they accepted Islam. And if I were to go according to your experience there, I would have quit a long time ago. Way before that. So we don't give up. As long as the door is still open, people will still listen, they will still take from you things, you can still make some inroads, you keep trying. Yeah, the brother's saying that, you never know when something will happen in that person's life which will cause them now to fall back on what you had been saying. Because that thing happens, they have nothing to solve their problems with. They don't have, so the only thing they can reach back is from the back of their minds, in their subconscious, whatever, these other things come up, what you've been saying to them all along, and then they start going down that road. So many, many cases. So the point is, don't despair, you just give the message and leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
I have a Filipino office mate who always shows to other non-Muslim people the beheading of people in Iraq. And whenever I discuss to him, I try to find out why he is so against Islam. I found out that his uncle accepted Islam long time back. But whenever I ask him why his uncle accepted Islam, he just turns the topic. He doesn't want to talk about that. So I don't know how to start to him again.
Well, the question is, when you ask him about why his uncle accepted Islam, is this in front of other people? That's the mistake, right? That's the mistake. You ask him by himself, where he doesn't feel that it's going to be an embarrassment for him, then he'll tell you. And then from that door, you try to work on him. Inshallah. Just a minute. Give the chance to the women, please, first. Women have any question, please? At the same time, the next portion of the notes, somebody has the... I don't know why you all haven't received your notes yet either. It was supposed to have been given to you before pre-registration. Because the idea was for you to go over this material even before you came to the first sessions.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
My question is, how do we approach a person whom, when we just start a sentence and she gets an idea that we're going to speak something about religion, says point blank on the face, I'm not interested, change the topic. How do we approach such a person? Jazakallah khair.
Okay. Although this is coming under our heading of tips for Dawa, really, you know. But we can just say briefly that if the person tries to change the topic, then you have to try to find what topic is interesting to them. So the topic which will hold their interest is the one that you now have to try to figure out how you can work that around to Islam. Right? So rather than taking it from the preaching perspective, right? The preaching perspective meaning you have something you want to give them, and no, you try it from the teaching perspective. You see where they are and give them what is appropriate. The next section of the notes, somebody has this for me, please? Okay, go ahead.
This is the question regarding, you told about madhab. We can, I mean,
about?
Madhab.
Madhab.
Yeah, madhab. In that you mentioned peer and all, you know. So I want to ask, some people are following the peer, Sufism. What they are telling, you know, this is nothing but what Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught to us. Comment about this, and whether we have to, I mean, go in between them or whatever it may be. I don't know exactly.
Well, if somebody claims this is what the Prophet ﷺ taught, then what is required of them is to bring the proof for their claim. That's what we ask them for. Okay, you're saying this is what the Prophet ﷺ taught, this is what you learn, then can you bring the evidence for this, please? You ask them to bring the evidence which supports that claim.
Actually, they are having some kind of proof in their own books and all. We don't know about that. We couldn't understand even. What we could see, that it's completely away from the right path. That we cannot, the layman can understand easily. But still they claim, this is the way, we don't disturb you and you don't disturb us. This is the, conversation they come to conclusion in the conversation. And second thing also I will
Okay, but the point is still,
yeah.
we have to deal with Islam according to the evidence. That's what you still have to ask them for. If they bring evidence, then you have to, and you cannot counter it, then you find a scholar who can counter it for you to get clarity, you know? Because that's the only foundation that you can have discussions on. You have to have some common grounds, or evidence from the Quran and from the Sunnah, from the actions of the Sahaba, how they understood it. Can you bring the evidence for this practice? You know, and what you will find is that 9 times out of 10, there is no evidence. You know, mostly it is just going on, my peer said, his peer said, he had a dream, you know, all these kind of things. But to say here it is said in the Quran, here it is said in the Hadith, hardly you will find that. So you use that as a means to bring those people who are promoting this to the reality of the foundation of the deen, that it is according to Quran and Sunnah. Is that what we're following or not? You know, so you try to educate them through this means of asking them in a nice way to bring the evidence for you. Tell them, I'm interested. That sounds very interesting. Could you bring the evidence for me for this, please?
Bringing them back to, the right part is also Dawa, correct?
It's an element of Dawa, yes, sure.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah.
Well, there was somebody else who was trying to get up to ask his question before. Okay. Go ahead.
But it's the sister's chance, right?
Sister's chance too first. Sure.
Brother, you said before speaking to non-Muslims, you should choose the topic well. Can you just tell us some good topics to speak on?
Well, we're going to deal with that in Tips for Dawa. We're going to deal with that in Tips for Dawa.
Sir, there's a particular Christian friend of mine, and he's trying to convert me. And he has been telling me two, 3 points or so. He's been asking questions. And he's not giving me an opportunity to talk to him. And he's not coming up for a discussion. How do we deal with such a rigid person?
But you're saying that he is bringing points to you.
Yes, he says, one day he told me that he's going to bring a book. It says that if you believe in Prophet Muhammad, and if you believe that there's only one God, you will also have to believe that Jesus is the Son of God. He's bringing such concepts. He's just giving me some...
Okay, so if he brings a book for you, then you bring a book for him.
Yes, sir, but he's not willing to discuss. He's not even...
Okay, the point is, if he doesn't want to discuss, he wants to give books. So he gives you a book, you give him a book. That's the level. You have to deal with the people again according to their level. This person is only willing to exchange books, then you exchange books with him. You know?
Thanks.
Okay, we need to go on now. Okay, save the question. It's a quick, short question, because it goes back to the sisters first before your question.
Question is short.
Let's see if the sisters have a question before that. Okay, go ahead.
The Tablighs, no? The Tabligh brothers are using that Fazal Amal book to Islah as well as Dawa purpose. How much you support that book, and is it right to support that book?
Okay.
How much is it authentic?
In general, in our Dawa, we try to focus on building and bringing people to the correct way, right? And to some degree, of course, that involves identifying what is incorrect, you know? But if we make criticism attacking the focus of our da'wah, for the most part, we will not be successful. Because when people feel they're under attack, their ears close up. They can't hear anymore. You know, they become defensive, right? So it is better to try to bring people around through other means, bringing them to Quran and Sunnah, through other means, just exposing them more. Because many times people are just not exposed to real knowledge. So whatever reached them and the people who brought it, how they treated them, this will have a big impact on them. Because to a large degree, the Jamaat, for example, Jamaat Tabligh, they do specialize in good character. Being humble to other people, trying to win them over through kindness and this kind of thing. They have become experts at it, So you may have the truth, You have come to understand that the correct way is the Quran and the Sunnah according to the Sahaba or the Salaf or whatever. You have this understanding. You're clear on it. But your attitude, how you deal with people is harsh, you're loud, you're rough, and you're gruff, and you find yourself all by yourself. People don't want to listen to you. So this is where we say that the character can win following where knowledge cannot. Knowledge alone, meaning, right? Of course, the best thing is character with correct knowledge. But character with false knowledge will defeat bad character with correct knowledge. So we have to be very, very careful of this. Very careful. So, as a fact, of course, the Fazaili A'mal book, we know it is filled with many weak hadiths. I'm sure I'm not saying something which you didn't know. You didn't come here to find out from me, is it filled with weak hadiths? You already know that. That's circulated. Most people here involved in Dawa are aware that this is the case. So it doesn't really serve, a real purpose. I mean, we have to be careful. We say we don't want to be beating a dead horse. What is known, leave it. If you're dealing in a circumstance with somebody who doesn't know, then you try to educate them to it. But just to keep repeating it over and over. You know what happened to me, to be honest, right? You know what happened to me? In Sharjah, we had the khutbah of Jummah. And I used to give the translation of the khutbah in English. Right? I used to give the khutbah itself in English. With the Arabic introduction in English. And I was doing the khutbah virtually every week. Then brothers like yourself, after the khutbah we would have gatherings and people would just ask general questions. I would answer their general questions. Then some young brothers like yourself would pop up and say, what about the Jamaat Tabligh? What about when they do this? And what about when they do that? And of course, you put me in a situation where I have to respond to what you're saying. Eventually, they stopped me from giving khutbah every week. I was only giving twice a month. Then it became once a month. Then it was no more. Yeah? So what was better? Was it better that in that period of time I agreed with what you already know, right? Beating the dead horse, right? And eventually be stopped from the khutbahs altogether, or that we left that? Focus on what I was giving them, which was taking them whenever they ask questions back to the Quran and the Sunnah, trying to inculcate that in them. That is far more important. Far more important. So we have to be careful that in our enthusiasm, right, that we may not destroy something good simply just to prove to a few people that, yes, the Jamaat has some errors here or they have some errors. And of course, every Jamaat has errors. Even the Jamaat which is supposed to represent, for example, the Salaf, the way of the Salaf, the Ahl Hadith, Ahl Hadith, as far as I have observed Ahl Hadith in India here, it has become a madhab. It has become a madhab, when really the way of Ahl Hadith was no madhab. It was no madhab. But it has become understood to the masses of people as a madhab. And many of the people involved have taken the extreme position that if you follow a madhab, you are a deviant. They've gone to another extreme. So, there are errors in all of the groups. So if we're going to be about errors and pointing out errors, hey, better we focus on the truth, what is correct, present that. Right. In the back, okay, we can discuss the errors, try to correct them, etc. But in the front, just try to focus on correct, providing correct knowledge for people. It's very important in our dawah, how we approach it. And because some people, make it so that for you to associate with Jamaat al-Tabligh, this is not good. Because they have errors in their manhaj and so on. So to associate with them means now you are a deviant. You have people who say that. If you're seen shaking the hand of an ikhwani, he's gone, he's lost his way. He's misguided because he shook the hand of somebody associated with Jamaat, Ikhwan Muslimin. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. This was not the way of the early generation. This has become our way, unfortunately, because the real work of building community, we have left and just become focused on differences in academics and knowledge and argumentation, and we're just caught up in those things, and we have left the more fundamental problems that the community faces. And it's unfortunate. How to expose any group to true knowledge, to correct knowledge. How do we expose them to true knowledge? You use many of the same techniques we use for giving dawah to non-Muslims. You get them as individuals, befriend them, introduce them to other circles, bring them into other lectures, let them hear other things, give them other books, other tapes. There's so much we can do to introduce them gradually to other knowledge. Anyway, so as I said, we can break here. Myself, I have already prayed Asr. I've joined Asr with Dhuhr. So if there's any of you who are travelers like myself, you want to sit back and chat until we start the next session. We'll start it at what time? 4:30. Right? The Jama'ah will be at 4:15, so we'll start at 4:30. Please, we'll start exactly at 4:30. Inshallah. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulil kareem, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi, wa man istanna bi sunnati ila yawmiddin. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. This session will be looking at general da'wah issues, questions which may be asked by people from a variety of backgrounds. It's not specific to atheists or Christians or Hindus or Buddhists or anybody. It's just questions that people commonly ask Muslims. Issues which end up in the newspapers and are found in magazines, on the television, etc., etc. People use them to distort the image of Islam. Now, a good portion of these issues are women-related, because this is the major area in which non-Muslims attack us. Why do we oppress our women in one way or another? So most of the issues we'll be looking at, I would say about a third of them, if not a half, are women-related issues. And of course, in dealing with these issues in general, there are some general principles that it's good to focus on, that in many cases it has to do with people's backgrounds, that they are coming from another experience, another life experience, and so when they look at our teachings and our way of life, it appears strange to them, right? Because they have established another norm. So a lot of times you have to just clarify for them, saying that, well, you know, this is a difference in how you were raised. You know, you have a different point of view, or we have a different point of view also, and there is reason for it, you know. And of course, I would say that I would say that a good portion of it involves clarifying that where Muslims may be doing what you are accusing us of, this doesn't mean that it is Islam. As a general principle, we can use the phrase that Islam is not what Muslims do, but what Muslims should do. Islam is not what Muslims do, but what they should do. In other words, you don't judge Islam by what Muslims do, but you judge Muslims by Islam. Now, the first of the major topics, as we introduced it previously, was that of polygamy. That Muslim men are looked at as being polygamists. They are promiscuous. They have 4 wives. That this in some way reflects on Muslim society as being hedonistic, involved in sexual pleasures, and this is the image that is commonly portrayed. The Muslim sultan, you know, lying on the couch with women dropping grapes in his mouth, his harem is out there. You know, this is the general kind of image that is, you know, presented of the Muslims and their many wives. So it is important for us to clarify for them that Islam did not introduce polygamy. Islam didn't introduce polygamy. Polygamy exists everywhere. Everywhere in the world. In every era. In every society. Polygamy exists. Don't think it's just Muslims that are polygamous. No. Even with your own statistics here, Dr. Zakir Naiki collected them. Statistics on polygamy here in India, where polygamy is not even permissible amongst the Hindus. More Hindus are polygamous than Muslims. Okay? What is that telling you? So you can show them these statistics and that can end the conversation right there. But further, as I said, polygamy is a part of human nature. The nature of males in general. And that's why it is found everywhere in the world, every age. The ancient societies of the past, they practiced it. Monogamy was not practiced anywhere. However, in Greece and Rome, it was the law. Right? The law was monogamy. However, both Greek and Roman societies had more than 50% of its members slaves. And the free Roman citizen or the free Greek citizen could have only one free Greek or Roman wife, but he could have as many concubines from the slave population as he wished. So was that monogamy? No, it wasn't monogamy. And the West, which follows Greek and Roman tradition, that's what when they identified their roots of Western civilization is Greco-Roman, they call it. They also have this law of monogamy. However, the majority practice polygamy. That yes, the non-Muslim male in America, Canada, UK, France, Germany, these males, Spain, etc., they have one wife. However, the majority of married males are known to practice polygamy through girlfriends, mistresses, going to prostitutes, and all these other things. So they're having all of these other relationships while saying that they're monogamous, but they're not. And even those that are not married, they will have multiple partners. The majority of males have multiple female partners. So they're practicing polygamy. Just they're not married, so it's not legalized, or they're girlfriends that are not legally recognized, and so on and so forth. So there is no true monogamy going on. There is more true monogamy in the Muslim world than there is in the non-Muslim world. That is reality. I mean, it's not to say that Muslim men, there are not some who commit fornication, adultery, and these things. But the rate of it is far greater in Western influenced civilizations than amongst the Muslim civilization. And if we look at the monogamy and polygamy contention, one would have to say that logically, where a society says, if you have one wife and many mistresses, that is legally sanctioned, okay, it's good. But if you marry one of those mistresses, treat her honorably like your first wife, that is a crime called bigamy, for which you can be arrested, jailed for the crime of bigamy. That is illogical. That is illogical. It makes more sense that polygamy, which guarantees the rights of the women and the children, be legalized than monogamy in law and polygamy in practice, where the children of such relationships are referred to as bastards. They don't have legal rights that they would have had were their mother's relationship legalized. That's logic. Furthermore, when Muslims say that polygamy protects the rights of women and children, people in the West would say, no way, no, it's oppressing women. How can you say it protects the rights of women and children? Well, look at it this way. If it is men who make the laws, and truly it is, the rulers of these countries of Western civilization, they're men. They make the laws. They make what is legal and what is illegal. Since they are polygamous by nature, we ask ourselves, why don't they legalize polygamy? What's the answer? Huh? Why not? They don't want the responsibility. It's responsibility. They want the fun, right? As they see it, it's fun having more than one relationship. But they don't want the responsibility of it. Because were it legalized, then it means they would have to look after their mistresses as they look after their wives. They have to provide homes for them, and clothing, and food, and all of these other things. The children they're responsible for, and their education, and lots of responsibility here. So that's not in their favor. They prefer to keep it monogamy. We respect our women. Remember, this was Jimmy Swaggart, right? And the debate between Jimmy Swaggart and Ahmed Deedat, the big debate. Jimmy Swaggart says to Ahmed Deedat, you Muslims, you have 4 wives. You don't have to be particular about who you marry. You have a second chance, a third chance, fourth chance. But us Christians, we only have one chance. So we have to choose the right one first time. After the debate, some months later, he was photographed coming from a brothel with a prostitute on his arm. Big news, splattered all over because he was a big televangelist. Here he was, a man of God, preaching, abstinence and chastity and all this kind of thing, and he just tried to put down Ahmed Deedat because of polygamy, and there he was coming from a house of prostitution, Big shame, big embarrassment. He apologized to his followers and made all kinds of excuses, and he would not do it again. It was a weakness, temporary, and all this kind of things. A few months later, he was again photographed. So that finished him. That was the end of Jimmy Swaggart. But he was the man who was talking about monogamy, and that was the reality of the man, The other point that is sometimes raised, and this comes from the female side, that since Muslim men can have 4 wives, why can't Muslim women have 4 husbands? Equality, right? Well, the point is that when Allah instituted polygamy, He made it a part of human society. He did it knowing the nature of human society, that there would be surplus females in that society. And truly that's what we find. Wherever you go in the world, there are more females than males in the major societies. And in the notes you will find numbers for Russia, UK, US, Brazil. All of these have more females than males for a variety of reasons. Among the reasons, that women live longer than men. That is by the destiny of God. Wars, armies of men killing other men. Homicide, people killing each other in society, mostly men killing men. Of course, you have a few women killing men, but mostly it's men killing men. And you also find, even in the birth of children at birth, you find that in general statistics that women female babies fare better at birth than males. So there are all of these biological, sociological factors which tend to lead to a greater number of females in the society than males. And it's only in societies where that balance has been artificially upset, like India, where having a female is a calamity, right? Because of the dowry practices in marriage, having to pay for these girls to get them married off. It is a liability. A girl is a liability. So it has become a common practice where midwives are paid so much to deliver the child and so much extra to kill the child if it is a female. I mean, this is something admitted by midwives across the country. Also in China, the balance has been upset there, because according to law in China, you're only allowed to have one child. So naturally, the family prefers to have a male who can help in the business or the whatever than a female. So female infanticide is on a massive scale there in China, as it is similar to what it is here in India. But as a norm, where societies are functioning according to the norm, then there will be a surplus of females. So if a woman then had 4 husbands, would she be helping the problem or increasing the problem? Obviously, she would be increasing the problem. So her having 4 husbands is not a solution. It is a problem. And also, the norm for a child is to want to know who his father is. And for the mother to tell the child, he's one of these 4 guys, I'm not quite sure who he is, this is not something satisfying. Yes, they have DNA testing, but in how many places in the world? The mass of people don't have this. So the norm is for children wanting to know their parents. That is known if a man has 4 wives, and unknown in many cases, or in most cases, if a woman has 4 husbands. Furthermore, if we consider history, human history, where a woman has more than one husband, and this is called polyandry. That's the correct name for it, polyandry. This is rare. You can hardly find a place on the face of the earth where it exists. And throughout history, it's rare, absolutely rare. Human society has, it has naturally avoided that situation because it is an abnormal and a rare situation. The only current place that I know of in which polyandry is practiced, does anybody know? Huh? Nepal. It's practiced in Nepal. I didn't know that. Anyway, I mean, as far as I know, you have evidence for that, or this is just, huh? Uh-huh. What state is this? In Kashmir. Okay, yeah. They also, I know, in northern Pakistan, in the province known as Kafiristan. In Kafiristan, you have a tribe there that worships a female idol. And the females are fewer than the males, and they have more than one husband. So it's a rare thing, rare. Anyway, the other point to note with regards to polygamy is that it prevents the spread of diseases, these sexually transmitted diseases, where people are sexually active. It keeps it within a particular family and not spreading it. Where people are promiscuous with no marriage bounds, then this is where it spreads. It's in these societies of promiscuity where polygamy is not practiced, where it spreads. There are 2 other questions that are commonly asked. One is that why does Islam permit something which is harmful to women, harmful to their feelings? You know, because virtually no woman will tell her husband, go take a second wife. I'll help you find a second wife. You know, that's an angel. That is, I mean, no matter how well the sisters know Islam and they know, you know, practicing everything, if the brother mentions second wife, oh, anything but that. Right? So we know this is a norm, and this is natural. And you know, I'm not saying I blame sisters for it, because the wives of the Prophet ﷺ were jealous also. You know, they tried to sabotage some of his marriages and things like this. You know, if you read in the lives of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, it happened. You know, so we know this is a natural thing. So a woman normally is not happy. In fact, her feelings are hurt if her husband takes a second wife. So why would Islam permit something like that? If we say Islam, you know, is about what is better, you know, what is good, what is beneficial, why would it permit something which hurts the feelings of women?
Probably because of the polygamous nature of the man. If he wants to go have an affair outside marriage, it's preferable for him to have a second wife than the wife to know that the husband is going out and having an extramarital affair.
Well, if you ask the average first wife, she would say, I prefer my husband to have an extramarital affair than have a second wife.
But if she's really God-fearing and having taqwa, I don't think she will do that.
Well, let's say we think the best and say she shouldn't. She shouldn't. But she might still express it anyway. But anyway, the point is that, as you said, Allah looks at the greater good. That if there is a greater good for the society as a whole, which involves some harm, a minor harm, to elements of the society, then the precedence of the greater good is given over the minor harm. You know, the welfare of the society as a whole is looked at as being more important than the individual needs and desires. Right? This is the principle. That's why, for example, alcohol is prohibited. Though some people may drink alcohol and never get intoxicated. So it doesn't harm them in that sense. You know? So some people will argue that. Why prohibit it? You know, I control myself. I control my drink. You know, I'm not, you know, destroyed by alcohol. So why does? Well, it's prohibited because the mass of people would suffer if it were made permissible. That is the reality. It's only a very small minority that would not go to excesses in drink. The other point that is sometimes raised is that polygamy, okay, people say, well, we can understand polygamy if the man's wife is infertile, she's crippled, had some accident or something, there's something which makes her non-functional as a wife. Some aspect of being a wife is not fulfilled. So the man is forced. You know, better that than to just divorce her. So they say, okay, as long as these principles are fulfilled, yes. Of course, Islamic law doesn't say that. That's just people, right, saying, well, we can understand it in these cases. But now for a man to marry a second wife because he desires a second wife, this is lust, they say. You know, and a marriage out of lust, this is not a good thing. So, what is the response to that? The response is that if a man marries his first wife out of lust, is that okay? Is there not lust involved when he marries his first wife? I say, yes, of course. It's okay, you know, because it's his first wife. Well, why is it okay if it's his first wife, but it's not okay if it's his second wife? Because in Islam, we don't have marriage to the first wife, which is one kind of marriage, And then marriage to a second wife and third wife is another kind of marriage. We just have one thing, marriage. It's just marriage. So what is acceptable for a first wife should also be acceptable for a second wife. Only Islam has conditions that the man must maintain or be able to maintain the second wife. To do so, he should have the means, the economic means, the psychological means, the emotional means to be able to deal with it. If he doesn't, if he knows himself to be weak, etc., then it's not permissible for him. So there is a criterion here. So, in general, we point out to non-Muslims when they raise the issue of polygamy that Muslims didn't invent it. And in fact, if you go around the Muslim world, only about 10 to 15% maximum practice polygamy. Only about 10 to 15%. Even in the countries that you think, well, they've got a lot of money, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, these countries, you'd think everybody must have second wives there. No. It's rare. 10 to 15%. Because having a second wife, though people look at it, men in particular, look at it as something, utopian. Oh, how wonderful it would be to have a second wife. They don't realize that when you marry a first wife, now things are not always rosy, right? You have problems that you have to deal with, So when you marry a second wife, you double that. They're thinking of the double rosy part, but they're not thinking about the double problem part, right? You see? So, those who realize what is involved, etc., think twice, 3 times before getting involved in such relationships. So, basically our defense is that Islam did not invent polygamy. We go on the offense by saying even you who claim to be monogamous are not monogamous. And we add to it that this is the nature of human beings. God has made us that way for a variety of different reasons. You can explain some of them, etc. And it is much more healthy for the society to legalize it than to criminalize it and thereby promote promiscuity in the community. The second point is about arranged marriages and the fact that women, can we save it to the end of the women's issues? Then we'll answer the questions. Okay, just make a note of it, please. Second point is that of arranged marriages, where the impression given to non-Muslims is that Muslim women are forced into marriages. They don't have any choice as to who they marry, and also that the woman, her father has to decide. She can't decide who she wants to marry. Without his permission, she can't get married to who she wants to marry, Some of it is true, yes. Without the father's permission, she should not marry the person who she desires to marry. If his refusal is legitimate, if his refusal is for legitimate reasons, that person is not practicing Islam, he is unable to look after a family, to fulfill the basic needs of marriage, whatever, if he finds problems which are true from a marital perspective, then it is his right to say no as advice and guidance for his daughter that she shouldn't do so. But if it is for un-Islamic reasons, because he doesn't like that person, they're from another tribe or another country, or they're not from our family, we are Sayyids and whatever, these kind of stories people have made up, right? These kind of reasons, of course, then the girl has the right to take her case to the Islamic court, and the court, in finding that the reasons for the father's objection are un-Islamic, has the right to take away his guardianship and act as her guardian and marry her, have her married, right? The other point in terms of forcing them into marriage, of course, Islam does not permit it. The Prophet ﷺ had said, the permission of virgins should be taken. and their silence is their consent. Their permission should be taken, but their silence is sufficient to indicate consent. So it is for the woman to speak up. If the father is insisting on something, she should speak up. Not say, no, I don't want to marry this person. But we have to ask ourselves, why is it that Islam has given the father such a position of authority to find a husband for the daughter, etc.? In societies where women are free to move about and deal with men as they wish, especially in Western civilization, you know, where women are and men are kicked out of the home once they reach 15 or 16, they're on their own, having to look after themselves. Well, the idea that the father is going to tell the young lady who she's going to marry is ludicrous. They laugh at this. They think this is really insane, you know. But that is because of their culture. From the Islamic perspective, the female is looked after by a male, either her father, her brother, her uncle, her grandfather, her son. There is always a male who is responsible for her. That is the norm in Muslim society. And she is not encouraged, in fact she's discouraged from mixing freely with males. So she's raised in a chaste environment where she's not likely to develop relationships which could lead to fornication, etc., with males. So naturally, when the time for marriage comes, she needs help in finding a suitable husband. And that's the purpose and the role of the parents here in helping her, not forcing her. Though we have to admit that in some places, some occasions, Muslim families have done this. They force their daughters, you know, either physically or emotionally. If you don't marry this person who we have chosen for you, then we will have nothing to do with you. You are dead to us. You know, variety of different, you know, psychological oppression which can force women into marriages that they don't want. And we know in the West, especially in England, where there have been a number of cases. Here it's not so apparent, but in England, where Indian Muslims, Pakistani Muslims migrated there a generation ago as workers in the textile industry, etc. That first generation that went there felt that it was their duty to bring their other relatives over. You made it to England. England is known as the land of milk and honey, where if you don't work, they give you money. You know, who ever heard of that, right? A land where you don't have to work and they will give you money, the dole, to keep you going. You know, so it is like a paradise on earth. So many Muslims, in ignorance, went running there, you know, for a piece of that pie. So, of course, once you got there, you got citizenship. Then it was your responsibility to bring your brother's family, your sister's family. So what was the best way? Marry your daughter to them. So that first generation that went and took daughters who were born here and raised here, they told them, listen, now it's time to marry your cousin. The daughters said, okay, no problem.